All right, so we've been talking about the if function in Excel so far, and we're going to expand a little bit on that. So we're in Excel talking about if functions. Trust me, they can get complicated if they want to. So far, we've established that we have the name of the function like we usually do. So we have our equal sign, we have if that we've selected from our drop-down list by hitting tab, and we have our opening parentheses. So, let's see. Over here, first section is our logical test. And very important, we need a comma after that. Secondly, the computer is going to be making a decision, so we need to make sure that we have the appropriate pieces. So the next one is going to be value if true. Again, we have our comma there, and last one is value if false. At the very end, we have to have our parentheses, and that right there is going to be your standard if function, the one that you've been introduced to already and got a little bit of experience with. One thing to take note of, if you are telling the Excel program to have a result, if it's true or false, which you will. If it's text, you need to put your quotation marks around it. For example, your true result could be yes, and your false result could be no. Just make sure you have your quotation marks, and then your comma, carry on to your next piece, quotation mark, value of false, quotation mark, and then here at the end, you're going to end it with your parentheses. That's very important because that's letting Excel know that it needs to copy whatever's in between these quotation marks, and then that comma lets us know that we're ready to move on to the next section of the actual function itself. Alright, so that is the basic if function. We're going to look at a couple things really quick, and we talked about comparing cells against cells and cells against a value. So cell to cell is going to be, let's say, B2 is greater than, let's say, A4. You're comparing two cells. Now, a cell to a value is going to say, let's say, C9 is greater than 12. A value is going to be any kind of number. Where up here, we're comparing two different cells to each other. You could be comparing a number or something like, if the word dog is in B2, is the word dog also in A4? Do they equal each other or not? Just a quick refresher, this is going to be greater than, this is less than. Think about little alligator mouths here. So the bigger and the smaller. So this is less than up here. You can have greater or less than and equal to. This is simply equal, and then the fighting alligators down here means it is not equal. And those are your basic ways to compare different cells and different values. Alright, so now we recap that real quick. So we're going to look at a spreadsheet here in just a second, and we're going to be looking at some grades. So whenever we have some grades, obviously we know that your pass-fail is going to be 70, right? Boo, school. Okay, so we need 70 in order to pass or fail. So therefore, my true is going to be pass, and my false is going to be fail. So those are going to be our two pieces. Obviously, we're going to separate it by a comma, and at the end, we'll have our parentheses out at the end. Now, for the actual test, the cell itself is going to change, but we're wanting to know if they passed or failed. Is it going to be above 70 or not? This is a simplistic way to use the if function. So I'm going to come in here, equal sign if, parentheses, and let's say our grades are in B2. So is B2 greater than or equal to, because you can pass with a 70, and we're going to put the number 70, so we're comparing a cell to a value. That is our logical function. After that, comma. Then we're going to go on to our true, comma. Then go on to our false, which is fail. After that, parentheses. And then now, if this is all in our cell, it would give us the pass or fail, depending on what's in our little B2 cell over here. And then remember that little box down here in the corner. You can take that, click, and drag downwards, and then it will copy the formula all the way down so you don't have to retype it, and that will give you your answers. Alright, so we just talked about the basic use of the if function. So now let's say we still have our if function. We have our test and our true, potentially with our quotation marks, comma, false, and then our parentheses to end it. So now we can actually have this whole segment inside of this test right here. So let me show you an example. We're going to use this to see if we can determine grades are the letter A, B, C, or D. For right now, I'm just going to show you the example of A and B. So I have my equal sign if and my parentheses just like always. It has not changed. Let's say again we're using cell B2 and that's what the student's grade is entered into. So we need our logical test just like always. So if we're starting with B2 is B2 and we're comparing it to a value, is it greater than or equal to 90? We have our comma so far just like normal. If it's true, then what is it going to output? Quotation mark A, end quotation mark. Now here is where it's going to get different. Remember, you can have one or you can have the other and you can have both, but you have to have at least one of these guys. You can't just omit those completely. So the comma shows that we're moving on to the next section, right? Well, now we are going to put if, and then we're going to put another set of parentheses because we're still following the format that's up here. This one right here. So if, and we're still working with B2, if B2 is greater than or equal to 80 this time, now we want the result to show as B, letter B grade. And we could keep going on and on with this, and you will in the exercise, but for now we're going to cut it off at here. Now remember we talked about your parentheses. If you have an opening parenthesis, you have to have a closing one. They have to have matches. So if you have all these parentheses hanging out here, then you better start adding some out here because they're going to be a little lonely. So look at your parentheses and make sure they have partners. So we have a parenthesis here, and you're going to add one here, and then Excel will actually help you out by shading them red to let you know that this guy is still hanging out there. So we're going to need another parenthesis. One last look, we have the if function here, we have our logical test, which is all this right here, and your outcome, at least one if it's true. And then we can kind of divide this in half. Now we started our next if logical test, which is all of this right here, at least one outcome, and then we're closing with both of these parentheses out here. So this is how you're going to make a nested multiple if function. Now hang on just a second and we're going to move over to a spreadsheet. Here is our spreadsheet, pretty quick, and I'm just going to review it. You guys will have the step-by-step in your handouts. So go ahead and put all of your titles up here at the top, shade them yellow if you want to, you don't have to, and then I added some outside borders here just to kind of keep all of my data straight. You do have student 1 through 19, goes all the way down to row 20, and don't forget you don't have to type each one of those in. So if you just want to do student 1, if you spell it right, student 2, go through and highlight these, click and drag downwards, boom. You can go all the way down to student 19 and you didn't have to type all those. All right. Your grades are going to be determined by your handout. So make sure you look at that and make sure you put the appropriate grades that you are supposed to. All right. For the pass fail, this is the basic one that I showed you guys just a second ago. So if I double click on this, I have an if function. Remember, it's going to be bold right here. It's not going to move on to the next section until you put that comma or if you end it with the parentheses. So if B2, you can type in B2, or I just clicked it, it's greater than or equal to 70 because we're doing a pass fail, comma, our value of true is pass. Since we're telling it a specific word, we need to have our quotation marks, comma, to move on to this next section, quotation marks again, and fail. So whenever you hit enter, it's going to give me a pass, which I anticipated because 89 is passing. That's basically what you're working on in column D. You do not have to type this over and over. Again, click and drag down, let it do the work for you. All right, the more complicated one is over here in the letter grade. So I'm going to break it down for you. I know it looks super crazy complicated, but you'll figure it out. You're smart. We're going to start with our equal sign if, just like always, and we have our comma. Remember, hit tab to select it from the list. We are still worried about B2. That's the only thing we're worried about in this entire thing. We're trying to figure out if it's A, B, C, and you guys are going to keep going down to D, etc. I just stopped at C. So B2, this is our logical argument. Is it greater than or equal to 90? Comma, our value of true is going to be A. Put your quotation marks around it. So if it's 90 or higher, you get an A in class. Normally, we would have our comma, our value of false, and close out with a parenthesis, but this time we are nesting another if function inside of our original one. So you have a comma, because we're moving on to the next section. If, you can select it from the list again. Type or click B2 if it's greater than or equal to 80, comma, quotation marks, it's going to be a grade of B. Comma to move on to the next one. Type your I, select it from the list with tab, type or click B2. If it's greater than or equal to 70, comma, then our result or our return is going to be C, again in quotation marks. And then you'll have your D, etc. on yours. Now, these parentheses, as you go along, are going to be different colors. The reason being is as you close out your function, sometimes it's hard to make sure that you always have the same number of opening and closing parentheses, especially when they're spread out like this. So when you put your first parenthesis, it's going to match in color to the partner. I put another parenthesis here, which is red. It matches the red partner. And then I put one more parenthesis here. I see that it matches the original parentheses in black up here. So that tells me I have the appropriate number of parentheses, that everyone's happy and has a partner, and it closes out my entire function. No one's left hanging. I anticipate that I'm going to get the letter grade B, and I did. Once again, click this, drag down, and yours won't say false. If it does, then you go back and look at your syntax. These are really failing grades, and I only did A, B, C. So yours is going to go past that, so you should not get these. If you get false, 0, hashtag name, go back and look at your syntax. If you need to, lean over to the neighbor, ask for help. I'm sure they're more than happy to help you guys out. So make sure you use both the basic if function for your pass-fail and then your nested if function over here. If you need to, you can rewind the video and then look at the beginning when I explain the difference between the two.